Can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I whip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bonnet. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.
Hello. Welcome to the show, you guys. Welcome to Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson. I am Dr. Jefferson. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about relating healthily in relationships with the considerations of mental wellness. So a lot of people are going to come up in this discussion because after reviewing some pretty extensive content on Kevin Samuels, Dr. Umar Johnson, and Derek Jackson, Cynthia G, Tommy Sotomayor, there are a lot of names. So I have reviewed the content of a lot of people. But even more importantly, I've kind of been gauging what the interaction and patterns and stuff in these dating groups and stuff on like social media, Facebook, and, conducting some surveys amongst people who are single that are trying to enter the realms of dating with the intention and purpose of getting married and things like that. And some of their ideas around it in the Black community. So before I get started, I want to make sure that I let you guys know that every piece of content that I might review or talk about today is subject to the internet's fair use policies. And yeah, Kevin Samuels, I've seen that he puts up a little disclaimer now, says that you shouldn't use his content unless you have his expressed written permission. So, yeah, I'm just going to be talking about some of the things that I've seen on his show. And yeah, I might even play a video or two. Who knows? At either rate, I'm going to go pretty much in depth about how some of the commentary that I saw on one of the shows that Tommy Sotomayor did fits into the scheme of how Black people and people of color who identify with the Black and Indigenous people of color characterization here in the United States, how some of the mindsets or some of the ideas around relationships have been cultivated and shaped by these people who are influencers, for one, and how some of the content I feel is needed, and we'll talk about that, but some of it is very much unnecessary. And a lot of the rhetoric that I've heard from Dr. Umar Johnson's interactions on the Breakfast Club and so many other places, and a lot of his speeches that he's given, a lot of that I feel plays to the tune of females and males and their interaction patterns all fit into one little group in the Black community, and it should look a certain way. So yeah, you know what? Yeah, tough love. This is going to be a difficult conversation to have, though, because within the Black community, there are so many indicators that mark and that are responsible for the unhealthy patterns of relating that Black people have now. And we're going to talk about a large amount of content, okay? But so what I want you guys to do now is go ahead and like and share this content. Subscribe if you've not already subscribed. And I'm not really sure why you haven't subscribed already. Like, if you haven't, a little offended. No, seriously. Go ahead and like and share the content so that we can have a more collaborative conversation here about this content. Now, I know that there are some Facebook groups that have access to this stream now, and I'm going to do a push really quickly, see if I can grab the YouTube link. Let's see. 1 second. So let me do that really quickly so that I can share that over there. All right. So give me just a brief moment and I will be right on here. So also I'll be reviewing some of the comments that I've seen on this recent post as well, as soon as I share this link. Boom. Easy enough, right? Things are sometimes more hard than what we would like for them to be. All right. So thank you very much, Mr. Tough Love. Hopefully everybody comes over to the YouTube channel, because I want to make that statement as well before we really get started into the nooks and crannies of the discussion of the day. So I will be primarily streaming using YouTube for the entire month of July. And it's my birthday month as well. So yeah, it's a huge thing. You guys are really excited about that. But so let's talk about relationships. Have any of you ever been in a relationship with a person and the person's personality was just so overbearing? Like, they had a really overbearing personality. They were very unfair as the way that they negotiated contracts in a relationship with you. Those people were very needy or clingy in the relationship with you. They gave you a really hard time and things like that, right? Have you ever been in a relationship with somebody like that? If it sounds like somebody that you've been in a relationship with, I want you guys to type a 1 in the chat, okay? If you've seen these types of relationships but never experienced one for yourself, I want you to type a 2. Hey, Lawrence, how are you? Oh, you're in July too? Look at you. Wait, are you a Cancer? July Cancer? Because I'm only in the Cancers. But so here's the thing. Sometimes in relationships, we charge people with the responsibility of loving us in the capacity in which we demonstrate we love them. We charge people with that responsibility, and we never really have a chance to open up the conversation and say why it is that we feel away after we feel away when they don't deliver on our expectations as a result of us not actually orally conveying that message to them, right? Wow, you're a day before me. I love it. I'm July 8th. Okay. You should come to Atlanta. We should hang out. But so here's the thing. In these situations where we find ourselves tethered to other people, before we even get there, in this day and age, we see people leaning and depending on the advisements of people like Derrick Jackson, people like Kevin Samuels, Cynthia G, and stuff like that. And even if we go into the very, very core of the comment that Tommy Sotomayor puts out there, what we see is that there is an abundance of people. There are an abundance of people who have suffered from significant traumas in their relational, discourse over the time of them being in or tethered to the relationships or whatever. They have suffered traumas from being tethered to these people, but they've suffered these traumas in such a way that it impacts the way in which they relate to the people in other relationships after that. Okay. Hey, Casey, what's going on? So what is pretty much synonymous across the board is sometimes we can be in a relationship with people that are overbearing. Sometimes we can be in relationships with people that are just a little bit too much because we're looking for that other thing that drew us to them to keep us there. But that's the reason we have something called the honeymoon phase of relationships. And what I have noticed in a lot of the commentary that Tommy Sotomayor has said on his show and on, I think he was on another guy's show. Correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, and if you guys have seen this interview that he did with this guy. I want to say the guy's name is Nez. Netter or something? I don't know. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. It's not like a direct, what do they call them now? Everything's a microaggression in the Black community now. We're all offended. But it's not a microaggression. I just do really, really bad with names, especially if I've only seen it one time. Hey, Alan, how are you? Thank you for joining. And I'm definitely looking for comments here. I'm looking for you guys to kind of give me some feedback about your relationship experiences, both in the vetting stages where you're looking for somebody to be in a relationship with, and in the dating phase where you found somebody that you think that you may be a good fit for, but now you want to know whether or not they're a good person to kind of lock down for steady relations and marriage potentially. That's it. Saw Netter. Look at that. Amazing. What's going on, Money Boy Trey? What's going on? But so in Tommy's interview with this guy, there was a female there as well, co-host, I'm guessing. And they talked about some of the trauma that Tommy had experienced during his childhood or whatever. And he admitted the fact that, and it's interesting, this took place after I made those statements about how I felt about some of the things that he was saying back in the day when he first got started. When it came to women, right? And I told you guys that it signifies a deep-seated trauma in his relational experiences with females. And as a result, he applies that type of energy and directs that type of energy to every female because all females remind him of that female, those females, his interactions with those females. So watch me. I'm bringing it all in, you guys. So all of these different people are tied in. All of them have a different role to play in the misconceptions that typically people now that are a part of the Black and the Brown community have around relationships and relating in relationships and connecting with people in a healthy way. All right. So what we see from Tommy's own admissions is that he was traumatized from previous interactions with women. He talked about him being sexually assaulted as a child. He talked about his further relationships being unhealthy because they were not formulated from a place of love, because of the way that he felt about his relationship with the many females that were in his house, not just his nuclear family, but extended family. And he also talked about his perceptions of Black men, because these Black men that got his mother pregnant were not the people who helped her out of a situation where she basically needed to be independent to provide for her family. And none of these Black men did that. But if you're really looking for a person to hold accountable, who does that person look like they should be? Should be his mother. It's a woman, right? So then he gets into a society where these women are requiring certain things out of him, when society has taught him already, there is nothing that I need to do as a Black man that I'm held accountable for doing as a Black man that are obligatory for me as a Black man. because what I've learned from my exposures, what I've learned from what I've seen, what I've learned from what I've heard, what I've learned from the streets, what I've learned from my interactions with other Black men, right? We don't have to do anything. And the reality is, women, you have to take accountability. A man will only do what you allow him to do. And people in general will treat you the way that you teach them to treat you. And that's the reason that so many people that have sexual trauma in their childhood end up in very volatile and dangerous and very unstable relationships where the person is not wholeheartedly adding value to them. Because those people see your trauma, or you decide that you trust them so much that finally you found somebody that you could share your experiences with, and then you bond with them through your trauma. And I talked a little bit about trauma bonding or bonding through trauma the other night, and how that can be extremely dangerous. Because here's the reality: people don't, in general, know how to receive, sit with, and utilize your trauma history and your stories of traumatization without being either traumatized vicariously through you storying what you went through, right? And so now they've joined in that spin, or using it against you later on when your behaviors don't align with what you already agreed to when you entered into that relationship. And so what that looks like is, I knew you was a hoe. I knew you was a hoe. I see what you're doing, and that's why you're doing it, because that's why your brother touched you. Obviously, you wanted that, and that's the thing. This is where the cycle of abuse starts, because people have no idea how to adequately hold space for you. You should not be asking them, charging them with that responsibility. If that person is not a clinician, and even if they are a clinician, it's just, nobody wants to get off work and continue to work, okay? They don't. They may have the betterment of your overall gain in mind, but they don't want, and it's not healthy for you to bond with them due to the trauma. Oh, Trey, I can't. So Mr. Brooks says, that was me for real. I'm glad I'm in a better place. Exactly. Trey says men should always tell women what to do. Okay. And let's talk about that. So some of the things that I heard in these recent interviews are Kevin Samuels. And I'm going to paraphrase what he said, because definitely not contacting him so that I can ask him, can I share his content? I'm not even giving him my clicks, but whatever. Kevin Samuel says that men built this world from the ground up. Look at every successful city where people dwell and they move and they think and they do in a positive way. Men built the foundation. Men built these buildings. Men built these cities. And so men should have some flexibility at some point, and they should be entitled to certain things. Okay. So there should be some benefits for men, not women. Okay. Women have no place, and women should not be doing or wanting to be seen as treated as an equal. He said that, look at who goes to war. Who goes to war? Men go to war. I'm a retired combat veteran. Yep. And I wasn't born with a penis. I've been a prisoner of war 4 times. 4. I've been in active combat, engaged in active combat over 11 times during my tenure in the military. So let me make something really clear. There are a lot of misconceptions, and I talk about people overstepping their boundaries and speaking in places they have absolutely no idea what those things are. I talk about that all the time. Kevin Samuels is a person who does that quite often. So I'm going to say this. Not every person is the same. Not every situation is the same. Not every relationship is the same. Not everybody's expectations for relationships are the same. But there are some universal truths when it comes to, like they say, the universal beauty. Some of you mentioned Kevin Samuels talking to the woman who blew her nose on his show. If you guys have seen that, type one in the chat. I agree. I agree, Mario. So I agree with you. Men were the first to do these things because women had a different position at that point. So Kevin Samuel's point is not invalid because men did not start in these particular spaces. It's invalid because men do not currently exclusively hold these particular positions. That's the reason it's invalid. So in a world that is, constantly evolving, and we as people are constantly evolving, that's what I want to talk about. We cannot be people that lean toward a lack of accountability. Accountability leads to growth and maturation synonymously, becoming one and the same, because it's a process that happens together for people. If we are to hold ourselves accountable for our interactions, our experiences, what life yields, our spiritual connection with people, for the people that we decide to lay down with, a lot of those things, okay? However, when we do not hold ourselves accountable and we don't move into a place of maturation, even though we're still growing and the world around us is still growing, right? What happens is we become the toxic element in relationships. We have no idea how to relate and how to respect one another in relationships. We have no idea how to build healthy relationships. We move from a place of emotional discord. Okay? And so what that leads to is people feeling invalidated. And what happens is over the course of that relationship, the honeymoon phase dies out. People start to become more authentically themselves. And when they become authentically themselves, and we have bonded with them through trauma experiencing, not through the significant thing that needs to happen for people, bonding with healthy boundaries and expectations, right? So that didn't happen. So instead, we chose to bond through trauma experiences, right? And now we've re-traumatized them, or we have set our foundation of our relationship on fire. So I hope that somebody has stone feet that don't feel fire, right? Now you're going to walk through. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your day. But so now you're going to walk through this relationship on eggshells, literally, because it's fire, it's hot. You got to watch where you stand, because you want to step in places where it hasn't quite heated up yet so you don't get burned. Your relationship is going to be very insecure, and the housing for your relationship, that foundation for your relationship, is unstable because you did not set healthy boundaries and or expectations at all. And so what happens is, listen, people get really upset with you when you don't deliver on what they want you to deliver on, because they're there for you, holding spaces for you, being traumatized for you. And they feel like you should just know what it is that they want you to do because they're holding these spaces for you. Or people get into the idea where they think that because they're operating in a certain place, in a certain space, in a certain way in your relationship, they want you to mimic what they are doing. People are not meant to be equals in relationships. I'm going to say that. They're not meant to be equals in relationships. Doesn't matter if you are a woman and a woman, or a man and a man, or a transgender or trans woman and a trans woman, or a man and a woman in a relationship, okay? You are not meant to be the equal. You are meant to be complementary components to a separate entity, and the separate entity is the relationship. So when you go out and you're listening to people like Kevin Samuels, who is speaking for or becoming the voice of men, or you're going out and you're listening to Tommy Sotomayor, who is speaking for and becoming the voice of men. Tommy Sotomayor said that he became the voice of all Black men, and he was a YouTube sensation. He's the first person, the only person to do it the way that he does it. And everybody else out there are extensions of him. Wait, I want you guys to see where this is going, because this one is the big one. Somebody tag Tommy Sotomayor so I can make it make sense for him, because he asked this question and I'm going to give him his answer right now. He said on this particular show that I mentioned earlier with Sa Netter. Am I getting that right? He said that all these people are extensions of him. And so if he is the person to do it first, if he is this God, right, king of controversy, and all of these people are following his lead, if he has done so much for these people, and the way that he explained him coming into contact with all these people, he explained very blatantly that those people came to him for help, advisement, and all of those things, and they bonded with him through their trauma. Listen, people, relationships are relationships, whether they are intimate partner in nature, business in nature, or otherwise, right? They bonded with him through their trauma. And after he had given them what they came for, after he had given them advisement, we're talking about Kwame Brown now, giving them advisement on his court case and those types of things, okay? Those people decided to go and now speak out against him. They became toxic against him. They started to disrespect him. They came for him. They made fun of him. They called him gay. They ridiculed him. All of these things. Now, let me go ahead and make something really clear. You know, I didn't know that because I really don't do a lot of YouTube watching. There you go. It is toxic masculinity, greed, agreed, right? So what happened is those people were an extension of him. He just started to see what his mirror image looked like. That's the reality. Because when people are an extension of you, when you have molded, shaped, and cultivated the personality of other people, when you have imprinted yourself on other people, when people have walked in your essence, as a result of that essence built off of you, you fed those people on your platform. Those people become really an extension of you. If you can say that, if you can say that that person told you at some point, oh, you know what? You taught me everything that I know. I'm so grateful. You're the greatest in the game. Oh God. Oh, don't be giving my producer no credit here. Okay. But seriously, when you have these types of comments being made to you from the people that you have cultivated, right? And then they go back and they do these things to you that you feel are disrespectful. You then have to ask yourself the tough question. You have to ask yourself, what in me caused this in them? What in me produced this in them? Okay? So you said any man that speaks negative or on another, I can't put it back up, please. Any man that speaks negative on another man's platform is weak. And that's what Tommy showed me. Okay. So is that to say that when a person is invited to another person's platform that they are not able to freely be themselves? Because that's what we're talking about, relationships and the impact of relationships. So the same thing happens in intimate partner relationships, or where you're first tethering yourself. When you're vetting a relationship and you decided, okay, oh yeah, we're going to go on a date. When you're on a date with that person for the first date, why do you think the real person doesn't show up for the date? Trey, I can't with you. I'm done. Whatever. You're a troll. Get out of here. Time out, Trey. So here is the thing. People are extensions of you. When we collide with people, when we find ourselves tethered with people, we are not their equal, no matter who they are. We are supposed to gain something from our relationships with other people. People are supposed to add value to us. We are supposed to add value to them. However, we cannot be the people that come in there and say that this is what I'm going to do for you. This is what you're going to do for me, because the reality is your spirits will collide together when they are needed to be in tune with one another. So it's like a divine destiny kind of thing. You will always end up in spaces where you are meant to be. Everything that happens for a reason in life. And so the reality is this component. If you are not a person who recognizes the lessons and the experiences you have with people, if you are not a person who recognizes how a person is currently adding value in your life, then you can't apply the proper know-how, the proper insight into how you move in future relationships and establish your healthy boundaries and expectations in relationships. So let's talk about Kevin Samuels and his contribution to all of this content, okay? Matter of fact, I'm going to talk a little bit to both Kevin Samuels and some of the stuff that I have seen and heard from Dr. Umar Johnson. We're going to go ahead and we're going to delve into those components synonymously. Shout out to the chat because you guys are amazing. Y'all are having an entire conversation over there. Before I go into this, I'm going to read some of them. It's the difference between active listening and passive listening. Some people already have their mind made up before you even finish speaking. Alan, you hit the nail right on the head, like the hammer on the nail of the head of the nail. I don't know, whatever they call that. But so passive, but it's to go even one deeper than that. Passive listening isn't just it. There is a difference between listening to understand and listening to respond. And then you also have passive listening. So when people want to have effective communication, right, in conflict situations, when I teach the 3 keys, I talk about these things. And look at this. You guys are going to get this for free. You don't even have to pay $900 for it, okay? It's really important that communication, the platform or the space that you're holding for communication, be safe. And that's the first thing. People need to know that in this space where they're going to engage in a conversation, they will be respected, they will be heard, they will be valid in the space in which they have a message to convey. And so the reality is this. Okay, we are different people and we have collectively different thoughts because we're made of different parts even in of ourselves, right? So when we have something to say, we have something to say that comes from a place of our own conditioning, our own perspectives, our own biases, and that holds true for us. Okay? Those things are not negated in their truth just because other people don't, agree with us. So effective conflict communication is essentially about understanding a person and not just listening to a person. Okay. So the reality is this: if communication attempts are going to be safe by way of us knowing this after we've gotten into a very hostile argument where things have gotten very heated and now we're being very disrespectful to one another, very dismissive of our thoughts and reflections, and nobody is getting anywhere because nobody's hearing anything. Because the reality is when you become angry, when you become emotional, there are no messages to be conveyed. You can't understand anything because your brain is not geared up that way. Only one part works at a time. That's it. So can we agree that Kevin, Umar, Tommy, etc., at least bring positive truths as well as negative truths? What do you mean by positive versus negative truths? So positive things, you mean by projecting positive energy and negative energy, or are you talking about their delivery in general? Because I think I've already said on previous shows that there is a lot of validity to some of the things that Kevin Samuel say, and I'm not saying by any means in this moment that Tommy Sotomayor, that's why I separated them, that Tommy Sotomayor does not have validity in his message that's being conveyed. I'm just answering his question. His question was, he does not understand for the life of him why people do him like that. That was his question on that show. And so now I'm just answering that question. Yeah, so positive and negative energy or vibes and things like that are definitely going to be some, but that's a perceptual component. So the people that are in the room have their mind made up on how they receive you. If it's something that in their mind holds some level of truth, but they're not ready for that truth to be conveyed, or it holds some level of truth in their perception that they're not ready for that to be conveyed, they're going to receive that energy as negative. Now, it doesn't mean that it actually is, but their perception is negative of that energy. The same thing goes for how we view Kevin Samuels and his content. Um, but I'm going to go back and finish this thought right here, right? So the thing is, with if we kind of delve into how Kevin Samuels navigates conversations, conflict communication, right? And we go back to how I was talking about conversations and conflict situations being effective in that they receive a person and they respect the person and it's safe for them to communicate. When Kevin Samuels invites women onto his show, he is not A, respectful. He is not B, receptive. He is not C, validating at all. Now, I will admit, now, if there are some innate truths, some truths that are, non-negotiable, they are what they are, and these are facts, right? Inarguable facts. We've seen, touched, and we know that the earth is solid, hard in some spots, soft in some spots, yet solid in general. We can't really get around that truth. Okay. Now, when we start to move into different languages and convey that message in that way, then your automaste would be something that I would say. I speak Finny and I don't speak English as my primary language. But so we could argue that there is a different interpretation than in English of saying hard, soft, or different type of textures of the earth, basically. But so what I mean to convey is this: when Kevin Samuels is receiving people on his platform for his show, he has a real issue with giving respect that's due when the thing become a hostile component, right? I asked you guys how many of you saw that show where the lady was blowing her nose, simply because I did go back and I did watch that. And what happened is she was trolling him. People troll people all the time, they're not here for that. And he became upset. When he became upset, he said, get this big bitch out of here. Right? Something like that. I don't know. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what. So what somebody get this big bitch from? This big bitch and something. He said some things. I don't know, because she and her cousin were both on there. But so the thing is this, when you, and that's something that he does often. And I don't think that people have looked at the matters of mental health that are at bay in situations like that. I talked about that simply because on this Netter guy's show, the woman that was there, she mentioned some people have mental issues. And what I did not like about it is the fact that she mentioned it like it was a bad thing. Okay. And there are already enough negative connotations associated with mental health and wellness in our community. And so, what I want to do first is to say that if you are struggling with the way that you interact with other people, and you are struggling with solidifying healthy relationships, if you are struggling with a sense of self and purpose in life, if you are struggling with suicidal or homicidal ideation on a regular or an inconsistent basis, if you're going through any of those things that justify, who knows, I just might need to get myself together and see a therapist. I don't want people to think that the stigma that has been associated for ages is valid, because it's not. At the end of the day, if you go and see a mental health practitioner, right, we are not here to judge you and then throw you out here into the world unprepared. It's about helping you find the resources within yourself to complete those components of development where they didn't complete themselves because you had significant trauma, or to help you recalibrate yourself where you currently are in your life so that you can get to living the best version of your life possible. And sometimes we even explore avenues that you can't see because you're in the mix of doing the dance of life. And so that's a healthy thing. That's a positive thing, not a negative thing. It isn't. Do people have negative energy that they bring to relationships? Of course they do. But I feel like oftentimes people bring this negative energy because we're in a society right now where people don't know how to lead. They only know how to follow. And that's very dangerous when we're talking about men are supposed to be the representative head of families. They're supposed to be naturally the leaders of families. They're supposed to be the protectors and the providers of families. And now men feel like they need to combat and be in constant turmoil with women. Okay. And that the women hold no validity in the conversations that they may have with them, which brings me to the third component of effective conflict communication. As you are transitioning from being the speaker and the listener, right? And you found space to give respect to the conversation by way of making it safe. And I always say use a safe word when you see things becoming hostile. But once you have found space to come back to the to the conversation, right? After you've cooled off for a period of time and you've set a time to come back to the conversation, you need to be respected. You need to be respectable, and you need to be able to be the speaker in its full context, and you need to be able to then turn into the listener in its full context by way of allowing a feedback loop to guide what that looks like. So you're not necessarily cutting one another off. You're listening so you can understand, and then the person who is the listener conveys what they heard in the message. Because when we are listening, I talk to you guys about biases. I talk to you guys about our own perceptions guiding and shaping how we receive people, whether it's negative or positive. The reality is we could still be in a very, very volatile state, and we could be in a negative space, and we could receive people like that. And so I don't give a damn what you're saying, simply because, like, who are you to be telling me that you feel this way, right? That's one of the main things that happens when communication attempts go wrong, go south. We start to think that people are against us and they're not for us. But what happens is when we feel validated and when people are asking us, hey, were you meaning to convey XYZ? And then because that message was received in the wrong way, they're correcting us and saying, no, what I was really meaning is SSS, right? Oh, okay. So now what I get is that you mean to convey SSS. Did I get that right? And then they're like, yeah, that's it. You're not giving them a response. You're not giving them a response to whatever they meant to convey. You're only expressing that now you understand what they meant to convey. So now, if they need a response from you, now that you got it right, you've clarified the message, you've done your fact check, okay? Now, if they want a response, you now have the floor, okay? So as a result of you finally receiving my message in the right way, is it possible that you can give me a viable answer to this? Right? Then you can go ahead and have the floor. You can talk about the message you intended to convey earlier. You could talk about what they've asked you to give clarity on or whatever. But the reality is, relationships are built off of mutual respect. Mutual respect is only understood and given properly when we know what a person feels indicates respect. Just because we feel like a thing is disrespectful doesn't mean another person feels it's disrespectful. And so if we enter a conversation with clear lines of delineation when it comes to breaking respect, right, components, we can have healthy conversations, healthy dialogues. And so I agree, Mario. But so my thing is this: when Kevin Samuels is inviting these women on and he's having these conversations with them, there is no mutual respect. The person who led me to his content, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there, is a guy that I had dated who was a narcissist. He sent me his content, a link, and he was like, hey, you should check this guy out. This guy just gives it to women raw. He just lets women know that, you know, they're not all that. And men don't have to come to the table with this if you don't have this, or if you have kids, etc. And I said, oh, okay. Well, I'm glad that you found somebody that you can resonate with. That's terrible. That's what I said though. And I left it alone. I never even clicked the link. And then I had tons of people then asking me to review this guy's content. Here I am, right? He is a good entertainer. He is an entertaining person. I cannot take that from him. But his message, his delivery, and the content, and some of the things that he talks about are very necessary. People need to hear it. But he puts himself in these positions because you're trying to force your thought patterns onto another person. And your thought patterns are opinion and not fact. That's the problem with it, okay? And so when you have a woman on the line, you're not a woman. So you cannot teach a woman how to be an effective woman. You can ask a woman about the type of man that she wishes to collide with, share energy with one day. And you can give her directions as to basically how to operate in a non-toxic way for the men that she wants to receive or women she wants to receive. But what you cannot do is give this woman an assessment of her value based off of aesthetics. People, are you serious? People stay married for 80 years sometimes. They're well into their hundreds and when they die. And guess what? They still love that person and respect that person that now obviously doesn't look the same way they did when they get married. And they have a very, very deep-seated respect for those people because those people put in the work that was necessary for them to evolve together. You have to do your self-work, okay? You can't be out here telling people, oh, you're average at best. You're a fair 4 or 5. You're a 6 or a 7. You're I don't know. What? You know, you cannot do this. And when they self-rate, tell them that, oh no, get this bitch off my page. Oh, stupid bitch. And click off. Close it out. That is crazy to me. It is absolutely crazy. And so I've already talked about the amount of accountability women need to take because the women that are calling into his show are just different. They're a different breed of women than I am, apparently. I don't think that I would have ever in my life, if I were in my 20s, 30s, whatever, I definitely wouldn't be seeking advice from a guy like Kevin Samuels. For one, he's not a guy that I would be interested in dating. So what can you tell me about the type of man that I'm looking to vet? Allow to vet me, seek me out. You understand? Court me. You can't tell me anything about that kind of guy. Because even if you knew that kind of guy, obviously your ideals and their ideals are in misalignment. You live a different lifestyle. There's nothing that you can do to help me. I agree. I totally agree, Alan. So, and that's a huge one, okay? Like you have to have, women have a position. I agree with that part, okay? Men have a position. I agree with that part. People have jobs and relationships that they're responsible to do for doing. And if we hold those people accountable, and if we give those people everything that they need to help us in the relationship, to be our help, to be our balance, then women can be a man's peace. If a man shows up and he is ready to do the job and he is committed to the cause and he is 100% dedicated to helping himself grow with that woman and doing what it is that she requires him to do because she's already stated it, right? That woman is not going to struggle when it comes time for her to submit to him. Because their spirits are going to be in alignment. I think that people have got to start doing the things that lead them to success in relationships. Quit trolling, Trey. You're a mess. You have to do what is necessary for you. And also the other thing is this. You have to be healthy in your interaction patterns. So if you do not want a person to look at you in a negative way, when they're thinking about going into a relationship with you, you shouldn't be doing things out here that are not conducive to wife goals, if that's your end game. I'm just saying, like, everybody is not meant for college, everybody's not meant for marriage. Get that. You say you disagree. Most of these females call in Kevin's show with so much arrogance, so he's forced to give it to him. Okay, so I don't disagree with that. What I'm saying is, his truth doesn't have to be their truth. It doesn't have to be a universal truth, right? And I do agree that there are some components of what we call universal beauty, universal attraction. So some people are just naturally attractive. They have everything going for themselves, and universally, because they have all of the things, okay, balanced in life, one could easily look at them and say, you know what, that's a very high value person across the board. But Kevin Samuels cannot speak to what the value is of a woman when we're talking about men that have such a high degree of variation when it comes to them selecting their partners. Men of different cultures think and feel differently than him. Men of different ethnicities think and feel different than him. And that's just a fact. Not everybody likes the same thing. Not all women like the same thing, but there are some universal truths when it comes to interaction patterns of women. There are some universal truths when it comes to interaction patterns of men. So we can, if Kevin Samuels was saying, okay, you know what? Don't be out here having all of these kids with all of these men, and none of these men ever had to make a commitment to you. And you're currently still engaged in those same activities, expecting that some man is going to come up, wife you with whatever your expectations are, whether they're a dude that makes 80 grand, 100 grand, whatever, right? If he then said to them, you're being unrealistic about your outcomes, you're being unrealistic about your potential, right? That would make more sense to me. Okay. However, because nobody wants somebody that's been used up, and their behaviors don't indicate they're ready to settle down, right? We already know that. Nobody wants somebody that's doing the behaviors that we don't want to welcome into a healthy relationship. That's a universal truth. Okay. Yeah, you guys gotta give a big shout out to Mario J. Tough love. I appreciate you. Thank you for sharing. For everybody who came in here, and for everybody who shared, actually. Thank all of you guys. Really, Trey? God, I can't. You like my nails? But no. Seriously, he can't speak for everybody, okay? The problem that I have with Umar Johnson is that Umar Johnson is, I don't know how to put this. I want to tread lightly, and I'm not a person that treads lightly, folks, because I'm still doing some research, and I don't want to speak too soon, but before I have the confirmation that I'm looking for. But I'm just going to say it. There is a video out here, and I want to say I saw it on Pull Up Gang or something like that, show or something. I don't know. I can't remember it right now. But this guy aired a video that Umar Johnson did, and he was working with some children. He was in the presence of some young people. And those young people had a conversation at a table. And during this conversation at this table, there were a lot of very inappropriate things exchanged. These children were given alcoholic beverages. The conversation was hateful, directed in, seated in hate, conditioned in hate. And this is a person that the Black community, a large margin of the Black community, has charged with building a school for their children, teaching their children. And at this table, the only thing that was being taught is hate for a different race. So we're going backwards here. And then after the conversation was over, and it was a long, expanded conversation. After the conversation was over and it was time to go back to the room, and he was the person that was recording from his phone device or something like that. He recorded this young girl's ass. That's what he was recording. And another young girl's vaginal space. Okay. This is what he was recording toward that end. And he was following it with the camera. So it's not like a mishap. You know, sometimes you sit your phone in a certain space like Kevin Samuels did, and that man was laying in his bed, and then he accidentally clicked around to the other camera where we saw the man laying in his bed while he was on the show. There's a lot there. Okay. You said, what's an example of what he said that was hateful? He said that he encouraged the children to take up arms against the white kids that they had been around. And specifically, he said that these white motherfuckers ain't out there for you. And he said, so what they say when you're around them, don't they got to say something that's offensive because that's how they made. Like, that's how they've been made. He kept saying that over and over again. He kept saying that's how they've been made. They parents racist and they don't like you because you Black. So then one of the boys started talking about, well, I mean, they might say something like, man, these ninjas or whatever. But I feel like, you know what, now in talking to you, I feel like maybe what they really want to say is nigga. Like, that's what they want to say. That's what they want to call me. Right. So that's the reason that we got to do this. That's the reason that we need this. That's why we got to start learning how to interact with these people that don't respect us, because they don't respect us. We got to make them respect us. A lot of the rhetoric, it was just too much for me. And yeah, he did also say that, you know, Black people need to take up arms and we got to go and there's some people out here that we got to put to sleep. He did say that we got to be willing to die. There is a war coming. All of that stuff, all of that. And this is a man that I see that the Black community has invested in, donated to, and you guys are still expecting him to build a school, and people are willing to send their children in an alone space with this guy. What in the world is really going on here? I really just don't understand. But, you know, it is what it is. I feel like in order to interact in relationships in a healthy way, people have to resolve their trauma experiences. And what he is essentially doing in his movement is re-traumatizing people vicariously through his experiences, both lived and conditioned, through the books that he's read, through the other things that he's read, and things like that. So you cannot empower people if your heart is negative, right? You can only seed hatred, and that's a whole different thing. I just can't get behind a person who thinks that the answer to violence in our community is more violence. Not teaching new and adaptive ways to cope means to resolve conflict. Not teaching cohesiveness, not teaching people to listen to understand where a person is coming from, not teaching to not go out here and be sexually promiscuous and just act out simply because you've been sexually traumatized and didn't get that addressed, not teaching people to go to therapy, not teaching people to have adequate means of expressing themselves without violence, not teaching those things, without sex, not teaching people to eliminate the trauma bonding experiences. I don't understand. I don't understand. But this is a person that you guys would like to take over and teach your kids something. Make it make sense to me. I have no words for the things that I have seen in the last couple of days, but what I will say is this. People who build healthy relationships, whether they're intimate partner in nature or they are business relationships, you have to learn how to ask people for the things that make them them. What are some of the things that you feel create your passions and your drives for the things that you're motivated to do on a daily basis when you really don't even feel like doing anything? What are some of the things that make you get up out of bed every morning and continue to thrive and continue to go and continue to move when you're really tired, haven't had what you need, whatever? Ask people what motivates them. Ask people where they get their ideas from. Ask people what's important to them. Ask people how many people they're having sex with. Ask people how many people they've had sex with. Ask people how many times they've been sexually traumatized if you want to before you move into a marriage, especially. That's a really important question. But ask the questions that are important that help you get to know that person in and outside of their traumas. So you can find out who the fabric of that person really is in their becoming. Okay. And I don't know what's going on with the new way that people date these days. I don't know where you guys got it from, where you thought that it was a conducive thing to the overall gain of being married, that you just out here and you multi-date, have sex with multiple partners, and then expect somebody to think that you're going to have sex with only them when they propose to you. Date multiple partners and then expect people to really believe that you're only going to be for them and them only when they settle down with you. I think that if that's what you're looking for a more open relationship in a non-monogamous context, or even a polyamorous relationship that's more open and free for you to go and explore other sexual partners and things like that. I think that people have to be realistic about what their outcomes are, what they see their outcomes becoming, and how they're going to get there. That's what I think. And you don't get that from having people pander to you like Derek Jackson. And clearly, you guys see he was an entire imposter, acting like he's the perfect guy. Yep. Told y'all from the beginning. Nobody wants to listen, but it is what it is. Choose to listen to who you choose to listen to. But you can't go out there listening to people like Derek Jackson, like Kevin Samuels, like Tommy Sotomayor, even in their traumatic experiences, like what's his name, Umar Johnson. You can't go out here listening to Cynthia G. You can't, Tanya TKO. I got a lot of people, you guys. I could keep naming them. You cannot trust these people to help condition who you're becoming in relationships. Short and long term, what they consider success? I think that's a really good question. But a more important question and a more pressing question is, what have you learned about yourself from your past relationships? If I don't give you guys anything else, if you don't take anything else from this conversation, take that, because that is a very, very important question. And that's a question that will help you gauge what kind of person you're moving into a relationship with. Because if people are externalizing all the time, pointing the fingers and blaming, shaming all the time, the thing is, what you don't realize is that when you point your finger, you still got a whole nother 3 fingers pointing back at yourself. Literally. So as much as it may be that person's fault for doing whatever they did that led you to feel whatever, it's also your own. And so I think that you have to take accountability for your role and how you teach people to be with you. You have to take accountability for the lessons that you didn't take advantage of and learn while you were in a relationship. And that's a really important component. I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody that can't learn and apply. Yeah, that's not healthy. You said Umar sounds like what Malcolm X says. I think that that's an extreme comparison, but very similar. Very similar. But I think that we also have to look at people like this is the one thing that stands out for me, you guys. And I'm gonna say this because I know I've talked about you guys not going to and listening to Tommy Sotomayor's advisements as to how to move in relationships and be and respect other people that you're trying to build relationships with, especially when it's Black women, because that's this area of trauma. But there is something that Tommy Sotomayor said that resonated in so many ways. And I don't think that he realized how much it should and will resonate with the people that are listening out there. And I don't even think that when people initially listen to it, they're going to realize how much that influenced the way that they move. Right? But Tommy mentioned the way that you guys are men. And when I say guys, I mean men. The way that men are gravitating towards backing Kevin Samuels and backing him by any means necessary. And the way that they back Kevin Samuels is the same way that I see people backing Dr. Umar Johnson when they follow him. And that's extremely dangerous. Is it cult-like activity? Yes, of course. Are those contraindications of a healthy means of coping with people who don't agree with us? Of course. Like, what's wrong with us? Like, when he said the extents that people had gone through to make him feel like he was not a god, like he was a touchable entity, a touchable person, right? There is truly something wrong with us as a culture of people when we okay people harming children, people using children, people sexually exploiting children, just as a means to gain the attention of the parent. When you feel like you will kill somebody, when you feel like you will support somebody at all cost, that is an issue. It's not a bad thing for you guys to listen to the advisements of other men. It's not a bad thing for you guys to listen to that. And I talked to that, that in the other night at my other show. But you got to understand, men have a natural position of leadership that they have to step into. To listen to another person's advisements or take things that they say into consideration is not the same as following them. And when you start following those people, you have to ask yourself, to what end will you follow a person? If they jump off of a cliff, will you? Same thing, same sentiments my grandparents had for me. And one of the biggest things is this, like, how is it that you could feel like it's okay for you to become upset with somebody to the extent where you're upset with them because they're disrespecting or disagreeing with the sentiments that a person that you follow has, right? To the point that you want to harm that person. You dislike a person so much that regardless of what they say, even if it's resonating with you, right? You can't accept it just because you don't like something about them or they're an opposing viewpoint from another person that you follow, and you want to physically harm them. There is something wrong with us when we see how many Black people are losing their lives, how many young Black people are losing their lives to these streets, and we are turning a blind eye and saying basically it's okay. Tommy talked about Nipsey Hussle, and that broke my heart. A person who's pouring back into the community that's obviously in need, a person that's showing up physically for the community that is supposedly targeted, right, at a disadvantage, needing resources. That person pouring back into a community, and guess what? Black people, same Black people he's pouring into, takes his life. What is wrong with us? You say that Dr. Umar Johnson is the person that is going to save Black people from this oppression that we've long lived and all this extra. That's not your trauma. You've not lived 400 years as a slave. You've not done it. You've not been oppressed. You've not lived through discrimination and segregation. Personally, I have, but you've not had these experiences, okay? These are not your traumas. These are not your issues. Yes, they were your ancestors' issues, but you have no right to stand and hold somebody else accountable for the misdeeds of their ancestors. Like, they have no right to hold you accountable for the missteps and the misdeeds of yours. And so the reality is, those same people that you want to hold accountable in an aggressive way are a part of you. They are. They are an intricate part of you. Mm-hmm. It is. That's just what it is. Let me see. I do believe he is heavy on the mean side, but I can see his main objective. Okay, so what do you feel is Kevin Samuel's main objective? Because that, I would love to close out with that. This is going to be fun. And the other component is this. I don't necessarily think that you guys should not back the person, that you're interested in, or you feel like is interesting or entertaining you or whatever. I feel like you guys should watch what you do in your followings of people's works and ideas, because that can sometimes be extremely dangerous. Right. I don't feel like Kevin Samuels is mean either. I feel like he's hurt. Are you saying Black people don't have a social disadvantage in this world? What's the social disadvantage that you feel Black people have in this world? Yes, that's what I'm saying. Marriages between Black men and Black women. Increased marriages. You think that that's Kevin Samuel's outcome? Well, let me ask you this. Why is Kevin Samuels not married right now? Like, why is he not married? If he is goals, why has he not found what he's looking for? In a world filled with women that are even calling his show, right? And men, because whatever his preferences are his preferences. Why is he not married if that is his end game? Kevin Samuels said very, very, very clearly that he was single on Tasha K's show and that he was dating. And he didn't do that interview a long time ago. Furthermore, I've seen him on dates physically myself. We've been in the same spaces, dates. So I don't know about that. Alan says he's very picky. Don't forget he's country bougie. He's picky, all right. He's picky, all right. I don't want to get married. I was 3 months away and white Jesus made me come to my senses. Okay. His failure to find a soulmate doesn't mean it is not his goal for the community to be married. Interesting. Now, you say he tried twice. He tried twice. Does anybody know the reason? Did anybody sit with the reasons that Kevin Samuel's ex-wives gave for their negating to stay married to him? Oh man, I think I talked about that already. So I have a no compete clause. Black men and black women have got to stop and move away from this idea of competition. You're not here to compete with one another. You're here to complement one another. Um, I'm not gonna specifically talk about it because if it was his sister, then it's kind of incest. It's a little inappropriate, but he definitely would be doing the things or touching her in the ways that he was touching her if that was his family member. Said I've been married for over 20 years, by the way. Okay. And you see his end game as marriage for people because you've been married for 20 years? The best way to compete is not compete at all, and that's facts. I agree, Alan, because you have to be complimentary. You have to. You can't be competing because the thing is, when you compete, that means you're in the same position. Your positions are synonymous. So how can you be married to one another? Trying to read, but my producer just continues to just go right from one thing to the next, and I'm just supposed to just read out of the chat box. Let's see. Both mature and had no need to get used up during our prime years. What do you mean by used up during our prime years? Like, you guys, I'm gonna give this thing a whole nother 10 minutes discussion just because. So go ahead, clarify that thought for me. So Kevin Samuels, the first thing that I'm gonna talk about while you're clarifying this thought for me about the using up part. Kevin Samuels, his end game is not to have more people married. So I can clarify. The first time that I saw even a partial video of Kevin Samuels, his end game of his show from the very beginning of the very onset of his show was for him to get men to follow him. He wanted men. Tommy Sotomayor talked to the fact of he had been contacted by Kevin Samuels before Kevin Samuels became an internet sensation, and Kevin Samuels was trying to dress him up. Kevin Samuels' marriages ended because he would not step into a place of responsibility and lead financially and take care of his wives and his wife and kid in the one marriage where he had a child. That was the problem in his marriage. That's why the centralized theme of his conversations are around men being financially capable and that being the end game. When he looks up these stats on the financial component, before Bill Gates had his thing and before all of the other stuff that he talked about in the marriages, Jay-Z cheating and all that good stuff, before all of these things, right? Kevin Samuels' platform was meant to reach out to men, and men rejected him. Men rejected him. He had nothing of value to give to men, the many men of the world, because he was broke, he was uneducated, and he had no value to share with those men. He reached these same men by way of addressing his trauma. His trauma was the rejection that he felt twice over from his failed marriages. So he wanted to be able to have a space to vent. And in that space where so many other men are traumatized in the same way, they bonded through that same said trauma because it became a cute thing for them to see other women or women other than the woman that really hurt them humiliated publicly because it was a reflection of the feelings that they had, the turmoil that they had, the inadequacy that they had inside as a result of them being in relationships with women that emasculated them, that made them feel less than. Okay? That was Kevin Samuels' endgame. When he blew up as a result of that, he continued his course. He kept that course with that same energy. However, you see that after he did the interview with Tasha K, he started to shift his energy some. Because guess what? Tasha K doesn't meet those same set standards in which he talked about on his show. But Tasha K is obviously married to a very successful man. And she's nothing like the woman that he's trying to mold these women to be. She's everything. Everything. Actually, that's the opposite. She's everything that represents the type of energy that he has with the women that he curses out and calls fat bitches, overweight, all of these things. Say yes, he's paying child support. Yes, he's paying everything. So the reality is he needed somebody to help him stabilize his emotions. So his followers, you guys, have acted sort of like a group therapy experience for him. And, you know, people get married and divorced every single day, and they do it in a healthy way. I help them. So I know plenty of people that have been married and divorced, and they still don't go and combat a woman because they're men. And men do not engage in arguments with women. That's just a fact. Straight from my father's mouth. He never argued with a woman. Taught me my place was not to argue with men as well. A man has a particular place and positioning in this world, and it's not to be arguing with women. It's not to be baiting women into arguments and trying to force a truth onto them. A woman's job is a compass. As a compass, she's supposed to collect information and relay that said information to the man for his end goal that he presents to her at some point. And then if he chooses to go that direction, he shares that with her and he continues to lead from his position. But he does so respectfully. And he does so in a way that appreciates the things that she does that contributes to his space. She trusts his guidance because he trusts her in her position. That's just how you balance out relationships. So you say only Sims get married. Is he really trying to mold women? No, he's not trying to mold women. He's trying to break down women because that's what he means to do to the women that left him, especially the one that remarried successfully. So you said a man gains nothing getting into a marriage, remains sucker free, and pump and dump. Huh. That's interesting. I don't know too many men. Well, I don't know. I don't know too many men that I know personally that don't feel that they've gained nothing from being married and tethered to the women that they've chosen. But the men that are in my circle are mostly a different breed of men. So I'm going to sit back and listen because I'm actually still at work. Okay. Well, let me see if I can find an answer to that question that I asked about being used up. Any of that in there, producer? Let's see. The game is very suggested that meow. Oh, wait. Casey has a comment. He says, that means the female done hit the wall. Okay, so let's talk about that. So when I treat issues in men and issues in women when it comes to sexual dysfunction, to be honest with you, the number of men who have been used up are insurmountably higher than women by that same age. And being married also does not prevent you from being used up. Now, when we talk about the way that people operate in the capacity of their sexual experiences in life, whether it's healthy or toxic or whatever, what we really mean is that when you encompass various sexual acts with different people, the energy that you're collecting and putting back into the air, because women receive energy, men put energy out. And so that's the whole thing. That's why men suffer from erectile dysfunction so early on, because oftentimes they engage in unhealthy sex practices and they're very sexually promiscuous in their teens and their early adulthood. So by the time they reach 30, 35, they're struggling to keep it up. And then some of them start taking Viagra and things like that just because they want to see if they can last a little bit longer. But the reality is, those components of their brain that are responsible for sexual stimulation and connecting those neurons and synapses and making those happen, the reality is they are depleted in men between ages of 35 and 55. By the time you get to a 60-ish year old man that's been very hypersexual out there in his encounters in life, he is of no substance. However, a woman, on the other hand, could have same amount of sexual encounters. Listen to what I'm saying. Encounters with the right kind of people, but could still be multiple people. They just didn't let the man just tear her body down, and she'd be just as good as brand new, like a brand new car. That's the interesting thing in this argument. But, I'm only a sex therapist, and I only see the people with the issues with getting their parts working. But it is what it is. That's not to say that sexual promiscuity in women is acceptable. It's still very toxic behavior. I talk about that every single day. Women have to do a better job of being responsible with their bodies and, preparing themselves for encounters where they can share themselves in a different way with their men. So, no, it doesn't matter if you eat healthy and exercise as much as you need to. Be a sexually promiscuous man and find yourself in your 40s, still single, trying to get married. And that's just the outcome. There you go. Everything starts in your brain, sweetheart. I've been a medical doctor for over 23 years. After retiring, I became a psychotherapist, and I've been doing this for 11 years. I specialize in sex therapy in men and women with and without a traumatic history. The reality is, the thousands of people that I have treated for sexual dysfunctions, okay, they have been to me because they have been through these things. So it's not opinion, it's fact. When we do fMRI studies and we study the way that your brain reacts and responds, and later in life and in situations where you've had too many sexual encounters, in general, men are the ones that are on the deficit. That's not to say that in situations where women have been sexual promiscuous, they don't have a downside to it. They just don't have the physical downside where it's noticeable or they are run down per se. You could have a woman that only had one sex partner her entire life, and she could have no walls because that man was objectively too large for her and tore her body down over a time period. So she could have less miles, as they say, but still be of less worth, because when she gets married to this next guy, his penis is smaller and therefore he has no feelings. Facts. Sorry. I know. It's disheartening. It sucks. But it is what it is. But at least you were a male born with a penis. Some people think that that's a great thing. Oh my God, no. You can never ask a woman's age. That's so rude. But I will say this. You have to do what works for you. You have to tether yourself to the type of energy that helps you in your journey of your becoming. You have to learn how to be respectful and yielding in relationships and in conversations with people in general. And you have to accept that people don't have to necessarily believe the same way that you believe. And they still can have validity to themselves. Just might not have any validity for your plight in your life, because your story and the navigation that you've already had in life going and you're still going on might look a little bit different. And that's okay. But I just need for these many men out here that are giving all of this advice to women out here to clean it up, figure it out. You're not here for that. That's what women are for. And they don't even want to listen to us. We're old and inundated. So, that type of value that you're looking for isn't out there, because you guys are putting out there that the type of value that you're actually looking for is a Barbie doll that's been modified by surgical implants and things like that. So you have created your own chaos, man. That's the reality. So stop having unrealistic expectations out of women and thinking that the value of a woman lies in her physique or her physical looks. Now, I'm not going to say it's not important for a woman to look pleasant-ish or whatever. And the same thing goes for men. But you cannot base the value of a person on that alone. So that is my show for the day, you guys. I love you guys. Thank you so much for coming through. Thanks for sitting through this very, very long-winded chat with me. If you have topic suggestions and things like that, you guys want me to review, etc., don't hesitate to send them to doclqj@gmail.com. I am 100% here for it. Understand that I'm the therapist, psychotherapist, that is here to have the difficult conversations that our culture, our society, Black and brown communities negate to have every single day because they're too difficult for us to sit with oftentimes. And some things we just don't want to hear because it's just not something that applies directly to us. I agree, Alan. You got it. You hit the nail on the head just again. Like intellectual conversations between people are way more valuable than the physical conversations between people. If you've not already liked and subscribed, what are you doing? Go ahead and do that. Hit the notification bell. Welcome. You are more than welcome, you guys. And again, shout out to Money Boy Trey for my outro, which you guys are going to see in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Who alive can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I whip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bunny. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.